All right, ready? Hello, and welcome to part 2 of putting a new engine into my Jeep Wrangler as an absolute idiot, and not a mechanic. 2 months ago, I purchased this 2001 Jeep Wrangler. Lo and behold, it was a 60th anniversary edition, of which they only built just over 3,000. That doesn't help the fact that the one I bought had a bad motor in it. Oh yeah, that's good. So, like the idiot I am, I decided that I, again, not a mechanic, would put a new motor in it. In part 1, we made room to get that engine out by removing the fender and the grille. We picked up a new motor and pulled the old one out. Then we swapped everything we needed off the old engine onto the new one. Almost everything. And now it's time to get that new engine into the Jeep and see if it even runs, because I've never heard the new engine run. Now, once I put the oil pan on the new motor, then I have to bolt on the clutch to the back. But after that, it's ready to go in. But the problem is, well, we'll come out here and take a peek. Problem is, storms are coming. So in order to save us from doing this out in the rain, we pulled my brother's vet out and pushed the Jeep in, and then I'll be able to do it in the nice, dry warmth of the garage. Just kidding, I don't need warmth. It's so hot out, but it'd be much nicer to do. But before putting the Jeep in, we needed to make sure the engine was all buttoned up entirely and ready to drop in the Jeep. So step 1 was to rotate the engine, pull the bad oil pan off, and clean up the surface for a new gasket. It's quite stormy out now. Thank God we got this in here. Now, we have to clean up the new oil pan before we put it on the motor. Here is the new one. It's not new, it's the one off of the Jeep in the first place. It's all cruddy. Now, you guys are probably curious why I'm swapping the oil pan over. And the only reason is, I'd show you the old oil pan. It's on the old motor now. We swapped them over. But it had a hole in it, and it looked like the place that I got the motor from just drilled a hole up to drain the oil out. They must have thought that was the fastest way to do it, which it is, but it ruins the oil pan. They put a little plug in it. Actually, the plug's right down here. They put this little plug in it, and it was leaking oil. So thank God I didn't put this motor in there with that oil pan with this plug, because who knows if this can withstand any sort of oil pressure. And with my luck, I'd put the motor in, start it, oil pressure would build and blow this plug right out, run the motor, drive oil, and seize it. That would be just my luck. So since the oil pan on the engine that was originally in the Jeep was still in perfect shape, we took the old gasket off it and proceeded to clean all the yuck, oily, coolant, chocolatey mix out of the pan. Then put the shiny new old pan on the motor. With the new pan installed, Dad and I bolted on the new clutch off camera, and now the engine was finally completely assembled and ready to go in. Next, Dad and I moved the Jeep into position, hooked up the new engine to the crane, and maneuvered the new motor into the Jeep. As Dad worked on bolting up the motor mounts up top, I bolted the engine to the transmission down below. Next, we rolled the Jeep out of the garage. Everything wasn't hooked up yet to start it. And then we got the old 4.0 out of the garage. And looked very redneck doing it. So today could be a very, very good day or a very poopy sad day. That's because last night we did get the motor in. It's bolted in, and that's about it. Motor mounts are bolted in, but nothing is hooked up. So the goal of today is to get this thing fired up to make sure it runs, because I actually haven't seen this run yet. It will in a little bit. So what I'm going to do now is hook everything up that I need to get it to start. Now, I'm not going to put the grill back on and the radiator. I'm only going to start this thing for a mere second, then shut it off to make sure that it runs. So that means I'm going to have to put the serpentine belt back on, hook up the fuel injection, clean connect all the grounds and whatever other plethora of mess there's going to be hooking up to get this thing to start. First, I filled up the engine with fresh oil and threw on a new filter, and started hooking up the fuel injection and all the vacuum lines. Then bolted up the alternator, as well as the starter. While referencing a lot of pics I took before I pulled the old motor out, I continued the task of hooking back up all sorts of various electrical connectors and vacuum lines to their proper locations. And after using my neighbor Steve's tap, I was finally able to also install all 4 of the new O2 sensors. It's hot. It's really hot. But the engine wiring is actually going pretty smoothly. But we did just run into our first little hiccup. So, down here, we have this little connector. And every other connector has been pretty easy to find where it connects to. Not very difficult. But this one, I have no freaking clue where it goes. There is nothing around here that is an empty connector that should plug into. So I'm a little lost. So I'm gonna do a few Google searches. I don't know why I said it like that. So I'm gonna do a few Google searches and see if I can find any sort of answers as to what this is. It's just like a single green wire. I don't know what it could be. So I'm gonna do some Googling and report back.
A few moments later.
Google and forums are a great thing, a great help. So here we have the old motor. And if you look right down here, there is a missing plug thing that I never took off. This is known as an ignition capacitor or something, and it has to do with like keeping static out of the radio. That's why there's only one wire going into it. Actually, it's grounded to the block. So we're gonna pull this off now, put it on the new motor, and then we'll plug in the connector.
20 minutes later.
All right, everything that I think needs to be plugged in is plugged in. Serpentine belt's on. We don't have an exhaust and we don't have coolant, so I'm just gonna be turning it on and shutting it off immediately. I'm nervous, but let's see if we have power, and then let's crank it and see what happens. It's got oil. I think we're ready. No lights or anything. Ready? Dead battery. Guess I'll throw the jump on it. A little more power. This needs a second. You just had a flame. Got a fire extinguisher right? It's right here. All right, ready? Knowing that the new motor actually ran, we could now start throwing on the grill, which of course had the radiator attached to it, and could now start attaching our coolant lines. Next, we topped off the radiator with coolant so we could run the motor for more than 2 milliseconds, and finally hear what she really sounded like. Okay, let us see. Yep. All right, ready? Next step was to put in a new fuel rail cover and install the intake and filter. The next day, it was finally time to put that pesky little fender back on, which was a huge step for both the appearance of this project and the functionality, because on top of that fender sits all the evap canisters and vacuum stuff, and the Jeep doesn't run quite good without any of that. So with the fender bolted back on, I could now plug back in all those vacuum lines and more various electrical connections. Next up was another big step in the appearance aspect. Pulling off the old hood that looked like it was scratched by Freddy Krueger and then sat on by him, I pulled off the little hood tie-down thingy off the old hood and put it on the new used hood I got at a junkyard, already painted PX8 black, for just $250. I didn't film my struggles of putting on the new hood by myself, but I did film the next step, which was reinstalling the sway bar cover. I never really liked the little steel wheels that were on the Jeep when I got it, so to Marketplace I went and found these. Also little, factory TJ wheels with 5 good Mastercraft tires for a whopping $75. This was definitely an appearance upgrade for the Jeep in my book. I then replaced the rickety old soft top with a brand new one, and the end of this project that felt like it has taken months was finally very much in sight. And here it is, the big reveal in 3, 2, 1. I'm just teasing you guys. This is actually another Wrangler that I just picked up. You'll be seeing it in a video shortly, hopefully soon, but it's very similar to the one that we just finished up. And here it is, all buttoned up, all finished, running, driving. I thought I was the only crazy, loud neighbor around here. Who and what is that? Anyways, here she is, all running, driving. We're gonna take it for a drive in a second, but look at how nice this thing turned out. Now, it was all nice and cleaned. I actually polished it with this like black pigmented polish, and it looked really good until it rained for like 4 days straight. But man, oh man, what an improvement over what this thing was when it came here. Especially because of this. Climb in here. Sure to stamp off our shoes before we get in. Listen to this. No lights on the dash besides, of course, the brake one and the seatbelt. But look at that. No lights on the dash. The AC is blowing nice and cold thanks to my friends over at Northeast Auto Imports. I brought it over to them to have them recharge the system because, of course, I had to evacuate it when I swapped the motor. Here it is, running smooth as a I don't know. Now let's take this thing around the block so I can show you guys just how nice it shifts, how nice it drives. This thing really is one of the nicest, not to blow wind up my own skirt, it's probably the nicest Wrangler that I've driven. So yeah. Clutch feels amazing. Shifts are buttery smooth. It's nice and responsive, drives straight down the road, and the shifts feel so nice. Oh, this thing is a dream to drive. It really is. As far as Jeep Wrangler TJs go, that is. This thing is definitely the best one I've driven. You forget how peppy these things are when they're factory, when they're on little baby wheels and stock tires. This thing is amazing. I cannot believe it came out as good as it did. And when you hit the brakes, it's nice and smooth. It doesn't pull to one side. It's awesome. And the interior of this thing too turned out really, really nice. Once I pulled the seat covers off, look at the seats are freaking beautiful. This is the one blemish on the interior here. And of course my boots got some things on the new mats, but I mean, look at this thing. It is insanely clean for a New England Jeep. Looks so good with that new soft top. The new wheels look much, much better than those crap Steelies, and the inside is just, I mean, it's wonderful. Look at this. Look at this. It was worth it pulling the 8 buckets full of sand I did out of this thing. So thank you guys very much for following along with this build project, whatever you'd call this. This was definitely the biggest undertaking that I've done, I think, thus far. And it wasn't as bad as I thought. It definitely wasn't easy by any means, but I'm so glad that I did it. I learned a ton along the way, and that was not a fart. I promise you would know if I did. But just the feeling of proudness is not a word. The feeling of pride? I'm sorry, I'm tired. There's a lot going on. It's just a good feeling knowing that it's done and that I did it. I, of course, could not have done this without my father, but just knowing that we tackled this thing and that it's finished and works as amazing as it does is just, it's an awesome feeling. It really is. So thank you guys very much for watching. And if you want more Jeep content, then you just have to comment below and say, give us more Jeep videos, give us more Jeep builds. And I'm going to do it anyways because there are 3 videos coming up with Wranglers that are not this one. Like I said, there's a lot going on. I am a very, very busy boy. So again, thank you guys very much for following along with this build. I hope you enjoyed it. My mustache is getting in my mouth. Might be time to go trim that. But I will see you guys in the next one. Happy motoring.